Hi guys! In this video I'm going to show you how to make Shrinky Dink or shrink plastic ornaments or keychains. So to start, you want to print out a picture that you like, whether from the internet or a coloring book or wherever, and tape it down to your surface, your table or a mat, and with the Shrinky Dink film on top of it. Next, you're going to take your favorite acrylic brand markers or acrylic paint. I'm using, I think it's Kemper. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Anyway, they are a brand from Amazon. They're pretty cheap and they work really well. Now you want to block in your colors and you want to think of it as a stack. So you want to stack your colors. So for example, on this cat, I'm going to do the white and the black first, and then the planter in gray, and then I'm going to go back in and do the finer details like the leaves and the mouth and the cheeks, and then finally you're going to do a black outline around everything. So I'll let you watch me color the rest in, and then I'll get back to you with the next step. So for this next step, you are going to take your Shrinky Dink paper off of your mat, and you are going to cut it out. Now, for this cat, because there's fine details like the leaves, I didn't want to cut super close around it, because if you leave too small of an area, it doesn't shrink properly, it gets shriveled up. So what I'm doing is I'm just making a square shape, and then I am rounding the corners. And at this point, you also want to check to make sure that your colors are saturated so that you don't have any little gaps or holes showing through. And if you do, you can just go back in with your markers and fill it in. So you also want to add a hole at this point, probably the size of a standard hole punch, maybe a little bigger. You can use a hole punch to make it. I just use scissors. And you would add that if you want to turn it into a keychain. If you're making a pin or just some sort of, something you use in scrapbooking or a decoration, you don't need to do this step. So the next step will be to take it to your toaster oven or your big oven and set it to 340 degrees. And you want to bake them for about 1 to 2 minutes. Put it on a piece of parchment so it doesn't get stuck to anything. And you want to put it in, and it's going to curl up, it's going to shrivel up and look really bad, and you're going to think, oh no, my project is ruined. But it's supposed to do that. It shrivels up into a little ball, and then it slowly flattens out. So you want to leave it in the oven until it's flattened out nicely. And your instinct is to pull it out before it's completely flat, but let it flatten out. And then as soon as you take it out, you want to flatten it with something like a board or a plate to make sure that it stays flat. Otherwise, it could curve if you don't do this step. The next step is to cover the whole project in UV resin. I use the brand Let's Resin. You don't need to do this step, but I think it adds dimension to it and it just kind of makes the colors pop. So what you want to do is you want to put your resin on, a big dollop of resin, and then kind of spread it around with a paintbrush until it touches all the edges and it's even. You can see in the video that I didn't get it all even. I didn't look at it from all the angles. You really have to look at it in all the angles of the different light to see where your resin sits. The final step would be to cure your resin under a UV lamp. I use the Let's Resin brand UV lamp, and it has a setting for 60 seconds and 120 seconds. For a small project like this, I would put it under for 60 seconds or less. About 30 seconds in, I find that it's pretty much cured. And again, you want to make sure before you're curing that you fill up the whole area with resin. Otherwise, you're going to have weird leftover bits that don't look right. So you cure it and then you're done, and you can add a jump ring for a keychain, or at this point you could add, if you didn't do the hole, you can add a pin back, or you can just leave it as is and use it in your art journals and scrapbooking projects. Thanks so much for watching. I hope it helped. Bye!